slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can. I can hear the demons call when they do what they do.
What's up, everybody? We're here with our buddy Greg Braggs here from the Bragg Show, and we're just he asked me to start an intro video for him. Actually, we do that for everybody, and I'm kind of interested in his selection there. Did you actually take that video?
Yeah, that's kind of what I do is, fans in the stands, giving it from a fan's perspective. And that was one of my better shots I've ever taken. I cover high school sports. I cover college basketball. A lot of the stuff I do professionally is just as a fan in the stands, less media side of things. So I'm able to do a little more as far as video content. And, I've always loved capturing the moment at games, ever since cell phones videos were a thing. Even when it was crappy cell phone video, I would love to bust it out every once in a while if I felt like a big moment was coming. And then as cameras started to get better and better, I got more and more addicted to capturing the moment and not just, capturing it, but finding the right angle from the right perspective and trying to get the best shot. And for me, that's one of my all-time favorites. It's Michael Vick-esque. You don't see too many Bears quarterbacks make a play like that. And it was really sunny that day, and I had the sun right in my eyes, so it was hard to because I try to keep my eye on the field when I'm capturing a moment like that. So it was kind of hard to see my phone to make sure I was, had it framed right in the way he was moving. So I was just kind of hoping that as he was moving that I was framing it correctly. And then after he scored and I hit stop, I went back and looked at it. I was like, damn, that's a one in a million shot. I'm hoping for more of those throughout Justin Fields' career. I've captured some pretty cool stuff, guys walking out the tunnel in the playoffs, and being right above the huddle as they're, hyping each other up, and, the Cubs on their run to the World Series, and a lot of different stuff. I mean, some of my favorite shots were that I've taken were in high school sports with high school basketball, some of the passion and thrill that's just as pure as it gets at that level. So yeah, that's what I do. And you guys want to talk some Bears. So I figured I'd give you my best Bears video I got.
That's awesome. And you know what? I would have never thought that you used your phone for that. I was thinking you had a whole film crew. I mean, are you a season ticket holder?
No, but I go to pretty much every home game. Pretty much. I mean, I stopped at halfway through last season because every game was raining and cold at the end. The team was terrible. Fields wasn't even playing. So start to pick and choose your battles when you got a 4-year-old daughter at home that you need to give a lot of time to, which is she's priority number one. But I do. I mean, when in 2018, I went to every home game except for the New England game, and I went to the playoffs too. And I have a great video of the double doink where my poor friend who flew up from Texas to go to that game, diehard Bears fan, never gets to go to games. I go to games all the time. Convince him to come up here. Playoffs, haven't been in the playoffs in 10 years. He comes up here in Cody Park. He double doinks it. And as soon as he hits the dot, am I allowed to curse on this show?
Yeah,
you guys curse. Yeah, it hits the upright. And I thought it went in just because of our vantage point from the Cadillac Club. And when it went off and hit the crossbar, upright, and then the crossbar and fell, I knew it missed from my friend because he went, "Oh no, he fucking missed!" And it's like back and to the left, back and to the left. So I'll send him that little 3-second clip every once in a while because you can literally hear his heart split in half on that part of the video. It's classic.
Guy brought us a lot of pain and misery, didn't he?
Yeah, it was the Bartman moment for the Bears. It was a cursed moment. And
is he at a job anywhere? I seen him floating around
I stopped thinking about him as soon as he took that Today Show interview. That was it for me for Cody. Cut off. No more Cody in the brain, but you got to reminisce about the infamous double doink game. But that's why we're fans, right? I mean, the Bartman game was tough. I went to Game 7 of the 2003 playoffs when Kerry Wood hit the home run, and we eventually lost to the Marlins, and that was tough to watch. The Marlins celebrating on your field. They're heading to the World Series and we're heading home crying. But like for me as a fan, I always enjoy the story and the journey as a fan. And we go, some people say, oh, I don't go to the games until they deserve it. I like living through the pain. Call me, a masochist or whatever you want to say. But, to me, that makes the champagne taste that much sweeter when your team finally gets it done. And when the Cubs finally got it done in 2016, I can sitting in the bleachers. I had the luck of going to the World Series, being able to be there and know that I'd been in the bleachers so many times when the Cubs were terrible. And here I am at the World Series. It just resonated so much more. So yeah, I've gone to a ton of Bears games when they've sucked. I saw them play the Browns in the snow in late December when they were terrible. I've watched terrible games at Soldier Field, but when I finally get to sit there for an NFC Championship victory, and they maybe go on to, God forbid, win us a Super Bowl in my lifetime at least. It's going to be even sweeter that I went through those tough years and I saw that double doink. That's just my perspective as a fan.
Yeah. So, and you know what? You're right too, but honestly, for the Cubs, most of the people that went through all that, all their doctors told them that they are too old to drink the bubbly.
That ain't no shit.
Boost and the boost. What is that called? The boost?
That ain't no shit.
Yeah. But anyways, so yeah, how did you get started with this with your podcast and everything? What inspired you to get started, and what was it like? Because we're green here. We're just getting started. I'm blessed to have some guys, Matt Cooper and Cleet Campbell with me, and a couple other stooges that aren't here tonight. How did it all take place, man? Let us hear about it.
Well, I'll try to be short with it. I'm never short with my words, as you can already tell. But like I said, I always loved capturing stuff on my phone. I'd always gone to I've been going to training camp at Bourbonnais since the early 2000s. So I've been going for like 20 years. And every year I'd get video, and then I'd come back home and show my friends, and they'd be like, oh, that's awesome. And then I'd show my wife, and she'd say, oh, I don't give a shit. Go show your friends, and, every year that addiction of going to camp and getting the bird's eye view of the team before they played on the, and just being that close to the team was something that, I loved to do. And Bourbonnais was only about 30 minutes from my house. So I went a lot, certainly a lot more now that it's in Lake Forest. And, one year, like I said, I posted it for years on Instagram, and I had a few Bears fans that would see it through the hashtags that I would post. But then one year in 2017, I started putting a couple video on Twitter, and the light bulb kind of went off. I was already kind of doing high school basketball coverage at that time, and I saw how videos would circulate for their kid, the kids in high school. Their friends would share it. Their family members who didn't get to go to the games would share it. And they appreciated that because not all high school games are televised. So they couldn't see it. And light bulb kind of in that whole moment went off like, hey, I need to start capturing stuff that nobody can see, and that's where the training camp light bulb went off. I was like, hey, I'm going to start videoing at camp. And 2018 came along and I was ready. I literally videoed every single play at camp and immediately were posting it to Twitter. And I got attention from the players, Tariq Cohen, Josh Bellamy, Anthony Miller, and them guys were, retweeting and circulating my stuff. My videos ended up on NFL Network and different, like Good Morning Football and a lot of different things. And it kind of blew up overnight because Bears fans are just so hungry for that kind of content. And from there, I started getting some, people that were interested in what I do, and Bears Barroom, now known as the Barroom, picked me up and was doing some little stuff for them at first. And then eventually I started doing some of their podcasting shows. Then I started my own podcast called Shy Fans in the Stands with my buddy Joe. And from there, once I left Barroom a few years ago, I decided to do it on my own. And that's when I started Brags in the Stands. David Kaplan's a good friend of mine, and I asked him what I should do, if I should rebrand or whatever. He's like, always put your name next to it, And so I decided to call it Brags in the Stands. So, I have a good group of guys that help me out with the show that have a lot of passion. I talk Bears, Bulls, Cubs, Purdue basketball. I was covering a lot last year on a more media level, getting credentialed for games and things of that nature. So it's been a lot of fun. It's just kind of been a whirlwind, to be honest with you. I'm just a bricklayer, unless like you guys, this is a normal, 7 to 4 o'clock job. And, one day I kind of weaseled my way into media, and I network well with the right people. I've always kind of harassed Chicago sports media personalities even before I was doing this stuff. So I kind of had laid the foundation of kind of getting into this business, because I had already known Kaplan and Waddle and Sylvie were somewhat friends, where when I came up to them, they were friendly with me. And then when it became a media thing for me, they supported me and did a little work with ESPN 1000. They'd have me on for little bits and this and that. And, so before you knew it, I was all now I'm all up in it. So it's, like I said, it's been kind of a whirlwind, and it's been a lot of fun. It's always been something I wanted to do growing up. And, once I became a bricklayer, I didn't really ever think that was an option, but social media has kind of changed the game as far as having your own platform. And if you're a hustler enough, you can make something of yourself. You don't have to have gone to school for it. And I didn't. I tried to. It didn't work. I went back to bricklaying. So, it's been a lot of fun, really. And, I'm climbing a few more steps, got some big announcements here coming up soon. And, it's just fun. I'm going to see how far it takes. It takes, and then one day I'll give it all up and I'll throw my phone in the lake and you'll never hear from me again.
Oh man. So what do you use now? Or do you use a computer, or do you still use your phone from time to time when you're doing your shows?
Yeah, it's all on computer, and just like you guys are doing here, I use StreamYard. It's a great, platform for this kind of stuff. You can use video and pictures and stuff. And that's where, I love your intro. I think that's great. And using video and stuff, that's where I always felt like I kind of tried to separate myself from other podcasts who would just talk, and that's great. Some of them are very fun to listen to. It's important to have a good connection with the people you're working with and a friendly banter. People really enjoy that. But for me, I wanted to try to integrate the videos and the pictures. And so, this kind of platform is perfect for that. So that's basically what I do. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's cool too. I just found out, guys, that this guy is like my neighbor. He's like not too far from us. He's like, I'm over here. I'm like, no way. So
small world.
It's pretty cool, man. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely region made. I'm proud of it. I try to explain to people on Chicago sports Twitter, because I'm always like, I'm very proud of being from the region, but I'm also very proud that we are a part of the Chicagoland metropolitan area. And you look up what the Chicago metropolitan area is, we are in it. And so I always say, I'm from Chicagoland. I'm from the region. They're like, you got to pick one. I'm like, it's both. You dumbasses, quit busting my balls. Like, you can't, you're not allowed to rep Chicago unless you're literally right in the middle of it. No, I'm sorry. Us guys from the region, me growing up, I identified with Chicago more than I did being from Indiana. When I would go out on vacations and stuff, people would say, where are you from? And most of the time I would say Chicago, because I grew up a Bulls fan, Michael Jeffrey Jordan, I love being from the region. I love my, Indiana roots in that way. I love Indiana high school basketball and things like that. But I love that Chicago is, 30 minutes. I can get to Soldier Field in 30 minutes if I drive fast enough. So, some people that live in the thick of Chicago, it takes them longer to get to Soldier Field than it does me.
Yeah.
I heard that too. And, it's funny that you say that, because, Matt, he lives a ways away now.
I haven't lived in Chicago in over 10 years. So I live in Louisville. There's no traffic ever down here. And I can get to places within 15, 20 minutes. And
that sounds very nice.
It's the greatest thing ever.
That's the dream right there, man.
Chicago, and even though you're abroad and he's further out yet, so or maybe the same distance. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter, man. I seen Arizona, the super fans. I interviewed some of them on ESF and whatever. They're everywhere, man. It don't matter where you're at. That's old school, thoughts right there. You know what I mean?
I'll tell you this though, something that I have learned, because I've lived in different cities now over the past 10 years. I grew up a White Sox fan and I hated the Cubs growing up. That's changed because I've come to realize that so many people out there categorize us as the same. We're not, they'll ask like White Sox and Cubs and stuff like that, but a lot of people that I've talked to consider us like the same fan base, like we're the annoying Chicago fans. So I kind of got that when the Cubs were in the World Series against the Indians, and I was living in Cincinnati, and the Indians fans were nothing but jagoffs, and they were like asking me like, who you cheer, like that's where everything changed for me. So now I don't cheer for the Cubs, but I'm definitely happy if they're like doing well and like they're in it, because I've lived away now to kind of realize that it's not like where I grew up at the south side of Chicago, where you're either one fan base or the other.
Sure.
Way more people out there categorize us as the same fan base.
Sure. And, it's a shame. Neither the Cubs and the Sox can ever be good at the same time. It's either one or the other. Anytime the other gets good, you can bet on it that the other team is going to start getting bad. It's like we can never just line up the stars where both teams are tops in their division and we can have a great summer. Somebody's got to be, pissing and moaning. We can't have nice things in Chicago.
Exactly.
Hey, that's how it was when I lived in California, though. I mean, look at it. There was always just one good baseball team, and there was just only one good football team, and everybody else was just trying to fight for second fiddle. You know what I mean? I mean, so they've got more teams, more problems, I guess. I don't know, but hey, and then they're talking about potentially, Greg, I don't know if you heard about this, but they're talking, I'm sure you have, unless you live under a freaking rock, which I know. But they're talking about having another team in Chicago once we go to Arlington. What are your thoughts on that? Would you rep both of them? Would this be a whole another like division kind of type thing?
It would be ugly. I mean,
not Sox, or would you?
Yeah, I mean, think about the Cubs Sox dynamic. I mean, the Cubs are the love of the city and federal landmark, Wrigley Field, and they sell out even when they suck. And then you got the Sox on the other side of town that always seem to be a little bitter of their media coverage and the little brother, syndrome that every Cubs fan says Sox fans have. And it's us against the world.
Easy on them. They sell out every once in a while.
When the Cubs are there.
Also, hey, come on. Also, when it's bring your dog to the park.
I know, and Wrigley doesn't do that.
Those teams count too.
No, for sure. And I love Comiskey. I love going there. It's great food, and I love going to the bullpen bar under right field. I think that's one of the cooler vantage points in any stadium in the city of Chicago. It's such a unique view of the game.
Too, man. I mean, they can tell there and everything. And good food, and they got a squad, man. I don't know what's going on, but if we had that squad, I don't know.
I know that. Well, that's the thing is they're trying to like get their wheels turning this year, but just back to your point about the another NFL team. That's just what I mean. It's like, I think they'd be treated a lot like the way the Sox are in a lot of ways, but it'd be worse, right? Because the Sox and the Cubs have been here forever. So even though there's more Cub fans than Sox because of WGN and the history behind that in a lot of ways, as far as their worldwide recognition or nationwide recognition at the very least, with the Bears, you would have some fans that are so sick and tired of the McCaskies and so sick and tired of the failures of the Bears move over to the new team. You would have a few of those fans. It wouldn't be that many, but there would be a percentage that does. Then you would have new fans that grow into that team that are younger, that don't know any better, and just say this is the team I'm picking, but they would never be bigger than the Bears.
Yeah.
And the Bears would then be from Arlington Heights, which isn't in the actual city limits, but will still have the Chicago Bears as their name. You're never taking Chicago Bears from them, even if they they're not going to be called the Arlington Heights Bears.
Right.
So there would be this weird dynamic where the Bears would be the favorite team, but the other team would be in the city. You know what I mean? It would be very Cubs Sox dynamic. I don't think it would be like a everyone gets along kind of thing, and so I don't really want to see that. I like when, with Cubs and Sox, we're always arguing. So it's nice with the Bulls and the Bears that we can all come together as a city and fan base and agree on something for the most part, even though we kind of eat our own in both those fan bases as well. But it would be a weird dynamic. Frank says he's 15 minutes from Arlington Heights. Well, sounds like your property value is gonna be going up quite a bit. I'd be looking into the real estate market and selling here once they put that new stadium in. You can probably make it a sweet buck.
Yeah, he's got a buddy who works for the fire department or something, and he's looking at all of the surrounding areas that are potential.
I would be too.
He can invest and get some real estate,
Yeah. Brandon, not to interrupt. Greg, what do you think the odds are of that? We know the Bears are going to Arlington Heights, whenever everything gets to get all the pieces fall into place for that new stadium. But what are the odds? We've heard the talk of the NFL expanding possibly from 32 to 36, maybe 40 teams. There would be a lot of pressure under the Lightfoot administration or whoever's in charge of Chicago after the Bears go to Arlington Heights. What are the odds we could actually see a second team in Chicago, would you say, with expansion down the road?
I think it's decent. I mean, it's not impossible. I mean, going up to 40 teams, that would take decades.
Yeah.
They would only add these teams 2 at a time, right? Like they did with the Jacksonville Jaguars and Carolina Panthers to keep the number even.
Yeah.
But the logistics of adding teams, I mean, if you remember back then, they had to do a draft where teams and bring players from other teams just to fill the roster. So, bringing 8, to get it to 40, that's way out of way in the I don't know if that would ever happen, but adding 2 teams for sure. But maybe it's more likely that a team that's not doing as well somewhere else moves.
Relocates.
We saw the Raiders move to Las Vegas. Maybe it's the Jacksonville Jaguars that move to Chicago. If the Bears move to Arlington Heights, I could absolutely see something like that happening. I don't know how long Mayor Lori Lightfoot will stay mayor, but if she feels jaded, if she's still in that position and she feels jaded when the Bears skip town and she starts trying to flirt with teams to get here just for her last laugh kind of thing and put up the remodel of those, you saw all those drawings they put up for their proposal of what they would do if the Bears stayed at Soldier Field. I have to admit those drawings, if they were able to complete that and make it look like what they did, I'd be all in on that shit. I would. People are like, where would we park? I don't give a fuck where you park. Figure it out for yourself. I know where I'm parking. If you don't know where you're parking, that's your problem. I saw people the other night, last night or 2 nights ago, Elton John was performing at Soldier Field and a bunch of people were late to the show. They're like, we can't get there because we can't figure out how to park and now we're late for the show. Why are you late? Get your ass in the parking lot when it opens. You think you could just pull up to Soldier Field for at the start of the kickoff or right at the start of a show?
It's called Elton John's last tour for a reason.
You're not walking up to a grocery store, these people that are so privileged, get your ass there and have some fun. If you're not, no excuses. If you're late, that's your problem, Jesus Christ. So, I loved the drawings. If they were able to finish that off, keep the Bears there. I love where Soldier Field is. I mean, I'm totally down with them going to Arlington Heights. I've been to some of the new state-of-the-art stadiums, and I could totally envision that kind of a stadium for the Bears as long as they do it right and they build a casino and a sports book and hotels and parking lots. that'd be great too. But
Do you see any scenario where they stay at Soldier Field? I can't. I mean, the city has blocked them at everything they tried to do, putting in the sports book, renovations, this and that. They keep playing hardball. And I just think, and look, the McCaskies are going to get no sympathy from anybody, but I do see their perspective that why keep fighting this battle when you've got the land, you've got investors, you can go right there, and you don't have to put up with these headaches.
Well, that would be the biggest key is can they get the investors?
Yeah.
That would be the only roadblock that would keep them from coming. And what's up, Terrence? I appreciate the shout out. That would be the only roadblock is if they couldn't figure out the investment group and the people to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
Or does McCaskey buy the land, and sell the team to Jeff Bezos? And then Jeff Bezos is like, here's my wallet, pay, build whatever you want, spare no expense. That's my dream scenario because I'd prefer for the McCaskies to move on from this organization personally. They've had a nice run and have no problem with new ownership. We've seen what new ownership did for the Cubs and the Blackhawks, our front office changes of that nature, and I'm sure Sox fans and Bulls fans won't miss Jerry. He's had his success, but, change isn't a terrible thing. If George wants to sell the team after his mom, gracefully goes into that good night, if they decide at that point, we want to sell the team and get as much money as we can for this franchise because it's going to be worth tons with that Arlington Heights property attached to it. Yeah, because I don't think if a new ownership were to buy the team, they'd want to build that stadium themselves. Mm-hmm. So if McCaskey's going to build it, he's going to stay the owner. So we'll see how that – but the one thing I would say that would keep them from getting there is if they couldn't come up with an investment group that could afford – to pay for it all. Because it's not, what they're talking about isn't just the stadium, and the stadium better cost at the very least what either the Minnesota stadium or the Raider stadium cost, which is around $2 billion. The LA Rams stadium costs $5 billion. So,
and Greg, to your point, maybe that's potentially why they decided for the Rams and the Chargers to be in the same location. Sure. And you think that potentially might be something where we get to double doink Lightfoot,
because get two teams for one stadium there
over to Arlington.
I would hate that. So that better not happen because I want to go to Bearslandia. I'm not pulling up to Sharedlandia. I want to go to Bearslandia. So
I know.
But I see where you're coming from in that regard because their stadium's the most expensive by far. But they're home to two teams as well, and LA's got crazy money too, and everything's way more expensive out there anyway. But we're not just talking a stadium though. They're talking a potential casino, sports book, hotels, restaurants, this whole deal. So. How are they going to, find the investors to afford all that would be the biggest obstacle. Once they overcome that, they're gone. To me, they're probably gone regardless, but I have to give credit where credit is due. And what they put out, Lori Lightfoot's proposal of if they stayed, this is how it would look. When I looked at those pictures, I was like, okay, you have my curiosity. I would, if they wanted to do that and they stayed, you wouldn't hear a complaint out of me as long as it looked exactly how it looks in those pictures. And like I said, maybe they come up with something with the parking and make the Waldron Deck a 6-story parking garage, or something like that. But apart from that, I'm not worried about the parking personally. Everybody else can figure it out. I know where I'm going. I'm not telling you either. Save my spot.
Braggs, I got to know this. Have you heard about, they were talking about some petition that they have worked up right now, and they're not far off from getting it completely signed up, but I guess it would be to the point where they wouldn't allow not Chicago, they wouldn't allow the Bears, to come in and get some of the money that they need from taxpayers when all these huge contracts with television and whatever have skyrocketed. So to their point, they're saying if you need money, you have money. Don't pull any money from us. Would that detour us from coming in there, or do you think, you know what? Let's get it done anyways. You know what I'm
You're
saying?
talking about going to Arlington Heights?
Yeah, they're talking in that whole area. Did you guys see this? Did you read up on that?
I didn't,
I
but
saw it.
I guess I can see where they're coming from in that space. People, that's what happens is when, all of a sudden they're like, oh, sweet, we're getting the Bears. Oh, that's right, we're getting taxed for all this, and then everyone starts freaking out. I mean, I live in Crown Point, from the region. I mean, when they built the new high school at Crown Point, we had protesters walking around Crown Point. Don't build the high school. Screw the kids. Screw the kids. So people don't like when their taxes get fucked with.
Does that high school have a Chick-fil-A in it?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
Crazy story.
I wouldn't know because they only let me attend there for my senior year until December, and then they kicked me out. So,
Man, they're like, it's even got a Chick-fil-A.
That's why I made sure where we moved that it would be in the St. John School District or Lake Central School District, so my daughter doesn't have to carry the burden of the Bragg's name at Crown Point High School. I did enough damage there. So no, I mean, I get it with the that's what I mean. The red tape is going to be the biggest obstacle for the Bears in moving there. So, but obviously to own your own stadium, have your own property out there in Arlington Heights ups the value of the Chicago Bears tenfold to not owning your own stadium in Chicago and not even being able to decide what kind of turf your football team plays on, that you pay millions of dollars for these, athletes to play on, and you can't even determine what kind of turf they run around on. I mean, that's not feasible going forward. So I don't blame them for wanting to get out of there, but I don't think that it's completely out of the barn yet. But it's as close as it's going to be, and they basically are as good as gone, but it's not completely gone yet, in my opinion.
Yeah. Hey, Greg, being wired into this team like you are, just a couple of weeks into camp now too. I'm sure all of Bears Nation wants to stay cautiously optimistic that this team could possibly make a run at a winning season, a 9-8 finish. From what you've seen so far, what should we expect from, this 2022 Bears team? USA Today projects them to go 4-13. We've already seen the receiving core kind of get devastated with injuries or so far. N'Keal Harry goes out with this high ankle sprain already in camp. Yeah. So where for you, from your perspective, where do you sense the optimism level, and what are you expecting this team to do in 2022?
Yeah, it's a tough read, right? Because for me, it's eye test as a fan. I'm not an X's and O's guy. I don't break down tape. I didn't play football growing up, but I have watched the Bears my entire life. I have gone to training camp for over 20 years. I know generally what I'm looking at. I'm not an idiot fan, but certainly more towards the meatball category than the analytical type of fan. So, you can take my perspective with a grain of salt if you want, but at the same time, I have seen enough to understand, or have a good gauge on what's going to occur. And this team is a tough gauge because, last year was easy. I could have told you, this is going to fall apart. Matt Nagy doesn't want to start Justin Fields. Yeah. The writing's on the wall. He still doesn't know how to run the ball. He won't play his best quarterback. I'm going to play it. No, I was chanting fire Matt Nagy before the season even started last year. This season, this is a whole new regimen, new coaching staff, new GM, new players. So there's a sense of optimism because of that. We're at the ground floor. So it's all about hope right now. It's not about gloom and doom. This team is on the end of their rope and everyone's getting fired at the end of the year. That's not where we're at with this team. But to try to gauge how competitive they'll be, there's so many moving parts and so many ifs that you have to overcome as a fan. Because, I can look at the schedule and tell you how they can win 9 or 10 games because I'm just a fan. And I can be like, oh, we're winning this game. We're winning that game. We're winning this game. But then when you try to be a little more realistic about it, which, with me having to do this in the media circle, sometimes I have to ground myself. I can't just be the hype man, the gas man, like I have been in the past. You have to look at all the obstacles. They haven't figured out what their offensive line combination is yet. Other teams already know who their 5 offensive linemen are. So we're behind them. Tevin Jenkins just coming back to practice. Is he even going to play on this team, or is he going to get traded still, or is he going to find his way to the right tackle spot? I don't know. And then the wide receiver group, like you mentioned, N'Keal Harry goes out with a high ankle sprain, out maybe 6 to 8 weeks. He was already like, what role would he have on this team? Darnell Mooney if you stick to the receiver group, you have Darnell Mooney, who shows a lot of promise and a lot of potential to be a very, very, very good wide receiver. Is he a number 1? I don't know, but he has a lot of talent and a good connection with Justin Fields. And then after that, it's Velus Jones and Byron Pringle. Now, Velus Jones has flashed at camp, but the one day I saw him, they weren't even in pads, So it's just so hard to gauge. They need so many things to go right for them. They have, number 1, they have to stay healthy. We just saw it with the receiving core. Byron Pringle's out with a quad. Velus is day-to-day, and N'Keal Harry's out 6 to 8 weeks. Now it's just Darnell Mooney out there. Well, when that happens in the regular season, which it's going to, guys are going to get hurt. We're very thin as it is depth-wise in a lot of areas. So, they need to stay healthy across the board. They need their offensive line. They need to hit on at least 3 or 4 out of the 5 guys for them to be like truly competitive and not Justin Fields running for his life like he was last year. They need the receivers to stay healthy, because if they don't, they're extremely thin behind the ones they have. They need Cole Kmet to finally step up and be the talented tight end that came out of Notre Dame that he's supposed to be. They need their young defense who shows some electricity with Jaquan Brisker and Kyler Gordon. Well, we need them to mature extremely fast. They're going to be covering guys that they never saw in college football, for the most part. They have just so many ifs. Well, what is Roquan going to play week 1? I'm assuming he is, but we don't know that. He's holding out right now. Is Robert Quinn going to stay on the team all year? Or are we going to trade him at some point for value because he's a veteran? There's just I could go on all day about the ifs. And if all of those things work to our favor, or at least 75% of them, then they could be a team that is competitive, more organized and palatable than the team we saw last year, which was, let's just face it, it was a shit show. So I think you'll see a team with more pep in their step, a buy-in to what the coaches are trying to create culture-wise and system-wise. Will that be enough for them to win games? I don't know. They won 6 last year.
Yeah.
Do I expect them to be better than they were last year? Yeah. Does that equal more wins? I sure hope so. But then where are we talking? 7 wins? That's reasonable. But then 8, 9, 10 wins? Now we're starting to tear into those ifs working out category to start to get into the 8-9 win category, and then obviously the biggest if is Justin Fields and how much he can accelerate. They're trying to retool his mechanics and, his timing throws and his release and footwork and all that stuff, and he's in a new system. We went through this with Jay Cutler for years with new system after new system after new system with new offensive coordinators. So just so many different things. But I think at the end of the day, you will see a team that fights much harder for their coach. They gave up on Matt Nagy last year. Allen Robinson was the biggest example of that, but there were more guys on that roster that were done with it. So, I think you'll see a team that fights, and the hope is by November, they're the type of team that you really don't want to face that's a team that's more competitive and looking to play in the playoffs, and like, now we got to play this team that plays with their hair on fire and plays like they have nothing to lose. I mean, the Lions in a lot of ways did become that team at the end of last year with their new coaching staff. And, I don't ever want to compare ourselves to the Lions because that's as bottom of the cellar as you can possibly get. But if we can become a team that's like that is peaking and the type of team you don't want to play by the end of the year, then I'll be happy with it. But as far as win-loss, I'm keeping my expectations low. And if they supersede my expectations, then it's a win-win. We win some games, we have some fun. If they don't win as many games, we get a good draft pick and an offseason to build on what we're building to this year. Is my 9-minute answer.
Love it. Very encompassing.
Is there something like for me this year as a Bears fan? I'm watching it much different. I'm watching it as we're trying to get to another level. It's probably not going to happen this year, but maybe next year. But as a fan of the NFL, I'm going to be keeping an eye on all these wide receivers that got drafted this year.
Yeah.
Because I thought this draft class had so many really good wide receivers, and I don't like our wide receiving class. I don't like a lot of our wide receivers we have right now. I like Darnell Mooney. I think he's very good. I'm waiting to see what our rookie does. I think he has potential of being good, and then I think we have a bunch of number 4 and number 5 receivers on our team. So I'm going to be watching the NFL this year of these receivers and seeing how they produce and seeing what they're doing. And I'm already watching it when I watch the training camps on the NFL Network, on certain teams. Is there something that you'll be watching this year in the NFL as a whole? Just kind of gauge to see where the Bears can take it to the next level and see what we need. Or are there other teams that you're going to be paying attention to for the entire year to see how we can model after that?
I've always dreamed of getting into the 21st century of football. I mean, you watch some of these teams throw the ball downfield at will all game long, and we throw, we're lucky if we can get 150-yard pass, and other teams, you watch that Chiefs-Bills game last year where in the last 2 minutes of the game in the playoffs, they each scored like 4 touchdowns. It takes us all game to score 1 touchdown, and they're getting touchdowns in 22 seconds, and that's the peak, right? Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and the way they move.
That's
the ball.
The dream,
and that's what it's not only the dream, but that's what it requires to win a Super Bowl. I mean, I know the Rams won it, and it wasn't the prettiest Super Bowl. It wasn't track meet, and it does turn into that when you get to the Super Bowl, in a sense, but at the same time, to get to the Super Bowl, you got to win some shootouts. And, I think the Bills are primed to win a Super Bowl this year. And, and for the reason, like I said, what we saw against the Chiefs last year, they fell short ultimately against the Bengals. But, for the Bears, that's what, like last year, the one flash that Justin Fields had was against the Steelers.
Yeah.
In the second half. Ugly first half, refs making terrible calls. Say that again, Matt.
I'm saying my girlfriend's a diehard Steelers fan, so I was we watched that.
Well, she won, so she got the last laugh. But at the same time, that was a big game for the Bears and Justin Fields because we saw it. And he did that, what we're talking about with Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes at the end of games. Aaron Rodgers does it at the end of games, or, Peyton or Tom Brady. You say, you can't leave them time or they're going to beat you. Justin Fields did that in that fourth quarter of that game where every time it felt like the Steelers would give a body blow, Justin Fields turn around and take it right back down the field, and he scored a touchdown. And then at the end, you would have thought would have won the game. And then, of course, the defense gives it up in 32 seconds because, they're depleted. They had no secondary. I'm not blaming that on Justin Fields. Down goes Cleat. Down goes Cleat. No, that's okay. Hey, it had. We
just beat the takeout.
Thought he passed out. No, but no, and that's what we want to see is that. I want to see that moment that Justin Fields had 5 or 6 times this year. I want to see that because that's when we're going to know that it factor. We saw it once last year. I don't know if that's enough, but I'll blame all of it on Matt Nagy because he had no idea what he was doing. He didn't give him first team reps in the preseason, drops him in the bucket in the regular season. Then we're expecting this kid to have all these it moments. No, he built up to that moment against the Steelers and he had it. And then he got hurt to end the year. And that's unfortunate because you wish he could have got more experience under his belt, but he had COVID and he had the injury against the Ravens, so he didn't get as much of an opportunity after that to have his it moment. So, but that was it. So we need 5 or 6 of those moments this season. That's what I'm looking at. Can Justin Fields start to get to there? Now, there's a lot of people who go, well, the Bears didn't do him any favors, not getting him enough help in the receiving core, not bolstering that offensive line formidably. Yeah, they're throwing some, fishing poles out in the water for late round offensive linemen that might work out. Braxton Jones seems like he might be the left tackle. Now, is he left tackle by default, or is it because we found a diamond in the rough? We're going to find out. They casted a deep fishing line for Velus Jones. Could they have got George Pickens instead of a second round pick defensive back? Sure, but they went defensive back. So they're going deeper into the water for that big fish wide receiver with Velus Jones. Yeah, he's a little older. I'm not worried about his age. I'm worried about his talent. What I saw at camp, granted, they weren't in pads, but what I saw at camp last week on Saturday was a very explosive player. So I'm very excited to see Velus Jones. There's no proof of it yet on tape, on TV, but I think him and Darnell Mooney is a great start. Byron Pringle has a lot of talent. Is he a 3 or a 4? I don't think any of that matters if he is a guy that can make plays and catch the ball when it's thrown to him. So the N'Keal Harry thing hurts, because they casted some nets with him and St. Brown from the Packers and formerly of Notre Dame Fighting Irish, trying to find one of those guys that, can get right on a different team, a quote unquote veteran that hasn't worked out at other teams, and that's what you're doing. You're throwing things against the wall and hoping one of them sticks. Mm-hmm. And so is that going to be enough to give Justin Fields the tools he needs to have those it moments like he did against the Steelers? I don't know that. They're already getting hurt, so that's not great. But at the same time, the season's still a month away. So time to get these guys healed up. Obviously, N'Keal Harry won't be ready to start the season, but Pringle and Velus and Darnell Mooney and St. Brown and Cole Kmet are his guys right now. And then they got Griffin, the other tight end they brought in, I think, from the Texans. So, they're going to lean on their run game. We haven't talked about that yet. They're going to lean on David Montgomery, Khalil Herbert a ton, and that's a good thing. And then, can they play off of the run game to open up some holes for the passing game? And that's yet to be determined. Let's hope so. It's a lot of ifs, and we just got to see it. Everybody wants to get excited. I get that, but we got to see it first to start making grand proclamations. You go on Bears Twitter and it's either the Bears are winning 11 games and I'm going to tell everyone to shove it up their ass when they do, or you got other guys saying the Bears are only winning 5 games. They suck. And when they don't win, I'm going to tell all those people that were gassing them up to shove it up their ass. I'm just in the middle. Like, can we just watch this play out before everybody has to be an expert and say, I called it. Okay, cool. Nobody gives a shit. Your 5 friends are excited that you called it. Other than that, let's just watch it play out.
Let's have hope.
David Montgomery playing for a contract too. That guy's motivated. He wants to get paid next year too. So I think he can have a really good
I think Matt's absolutely right. If he stays healthy, he's gonna gain 1,200 yards and score 8 to 10 touchdowns. If he's healthy.
If he's healthy, if the offensive line is cohesive and healthy, and if they all catch on to the system early, the beginning of their schedule has winnable games. The end of their schedule is brutal. They got the Bills and the Packers and a lot of tough. Like I said, you go down the schedule and you're like, okay, they will win this one. They can win this one. You start to get to December and you're like, oh shit. I don't know how they're like, even as the biggest meatball fan, you're like, I don't know how they're going to win this one. You see them playing the Bills. You're like, they ain't winning that one, but hey, it's football. You never know. So, and and December's a long way away and you don't know who will be healthy for those games. There's a lot of variables that go into that stuff week to week. But to start the season, they have winnable games. Playing the Packers week 2 is tough. So, beating San Francisco week 1, could be a big, boost for them. Because then after the Packers, they have some winnable games to maybe give themselves a boost of confidence and a feel of, hey, we're in this. Let's fight, and see how long they can push that into November, December. So, it's just a lot of hand wringing and hoping right now. And that's okay. That's what we do as fans. But, David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert are the real deal. I don't know if they're going to re-sign David Montgomery because of Khalil Herbert. but that's a story for next offseason. Until then, yeah, David Montgomery in a contract year, he's going to be a monster behind there. And I think Khalil Herbert is just as talented as David Montgomery. So that's a great 1-2 punch. So, hey, let's drink the Kool-Aid. I'm all for it. I ain't got no hate on drinking Kool-Aid, but at the same time, let's try to be fair to it, because if you're going to drink the Kool-Aid, then don't get too angry at Fields or the coaching staff when if this all doesn't work out exactly like we want, because all the ifs don't come through for us,
What about when you were at camp? Did you see that Ebner? Because I'm hearing some good stuff about him. And that, honestly, I was hoping that Williams last year, number 8, would end up being like this potential guy that Ebner is. And if you can get that 3-headed monster to work on the running game, now you're opening up the middle of the field, the flats. So Cole Kmet is now more resourceful instead of 62% chip blocks before he goes out for a pass every once in a while. I mean, he can really get loose and get open. And we got that fullback. I heard.
Yep, Kari Blasingame.
Yeah, I heard they passed to him I know this is the underwear Olympics, but they passed to him and he took it down the field and scored. I heard a good story about Jenkins blocking. He was third team. He blocked a defensive back. They took it to the house,
Put him on his butt
for a touchdown. And so now I'm wondering, okay, you got Borum, and then you've got Jones. They're both fighting for the left tackle spot, and then potentially Jenkins has the right spot, and then right guard you're looking at, is left guard Cody Whitehair, right? So right guard would be Matt Schaub, from the Chargers.
Yeah, Matt. Good Lord, help me out here,
Matt.
I think it sounds right.
No,
let's go with Matt right now until
Schofield.
Yeah,
Schofield.
that guy forgot.
Schofield. Yeah, Matt Schofield, and then we have the center that we got from Green Bay, who I thought was a big pickup.
Yeah.
But he's injured right now with his hand, so that hurts. But he should be ready before the season starts. So, that's what I mean. They just have so many moving parts still on the offense. They haven't even figured out, across the board, who's going to be spotted where.
But some guys are like, hey, we need continuity. Let these guys stay at one position and let them grow in camp. Otherwise, we won't know who we have even till. And then I've heard reports where even against San Francisco and beyond, this is still going to kind of be a work in progress, kind of like you alluded to earlier, that we might not even really start to see what our team's going to look like up until November. So this might be kind of going during most of the season, because let's be honest, we don't know if Patrick is. I've heard Crute say, okay, he's got a club, put him at right guard, right? Well, now what about that center that we had last year from Notre Dame? Is he going to play?
Mustipher,
yeah. Is Mustipher going to play center, or is it going to be that rookie from Illinois? You know what I mean?
It's so hard. Yeah. It's so many ifs. It's so many ifs. And that's why I laugh at some of these fans, either way, negative or positive, that are like making predictions when you don't even know who the players are yet on any of these
options. I don't really hate our options. I'm not completely against any of them. The one that got injured, I really didn't care for him too much. And then the guy that signed, I think, with the Ravens last year, I didn't really care for him either. So all the offensive
Daniels.
Yeah,
James Daniels.
Yeah,
no, I like James Daniels out of
okay.
Iowa. Speaking of the former Minnesota Viking, like the Mahler type.
That we signed this year, Riley Reed.
No, he was he was last year from the Vikings. Last year we had him. No, I like, hey, there's another one too. Reef. I mean, is he going to play right tackle? Like, seriously, we've got layers, man. They went out and got guys that, I forgot about him. Thanks for bringing him up. I mean,
Well, that's what I mean, because they've been battling for right tackle, Reef and Larry Borum, and now Tevin Jenkins comes into the fold.
yeah.
And they've been playing him at right tackle a few times. They had him lined up at guard, but he's doing very minimal work right now. They're gearing him up, so maybe they tried to trade him. Maybe all that was lies or smoke and mirrors, but maybe they tried to trade him and they couldn't find a suitable trade partner. And now they're, he's not going to just sit at home and make money. So they got to find a place for him. And can he impress enough to make it into the starting five? Obviously, he's, a high second round pick, highly valued. Guys had him going in the first round last year. And, we get him in the second round. And, so obviously he's very talented. Can he take one of those spots? And then that changes the trickle down effect across the rest of the offensive line. Because then do you slide Borum somewhere else? Do you know what I mean? So it's so hard to say. I hope Lucas Patrick can come back before the season starts, because he knows the Getsy system, or at least is familiar with Luke Getsy, being from Green Bay, both of them. And I think that's key to have that stability in the middle, and the communication. And Sam Mustipher, like I said, I'm no tape expert, but it doesn't take a football genius to see how many times he was getting blown up last year. And so, I would like to upgrade that spot and then let it trickle down from there. Is Braxton Jones, everybody's saying he looks the part, but we still got to see it. How's he going to handle Nick Bosa week 1? Good luck to you. But, like I said, like you were mentioning earlier with Treston Ebner, I did see him flash in the day that I was there. I mean, it's only an hour and 45-minute practice. So, it's hard to see everything, but when they were doing one-on-one drills, you could certainly see how he's going to be a tough cover in the flats with a linebacker. Don't know how much I saw him getting handoffs, because they don't really practice running the ball all that often, at least enough to like make a real declaration on how it's going to look, especially when they're not in pads. But overall, going back to like the whole thought process with the offensive line, well, if this system and philosophy is about running the ball and a different kind of mentality than what Matt Nagy had, because Matt Nagy did his team no favors. He made Mitch look worse than, Mitch isn't good, right? We can agree on that. He wasn't good enough. I was a big Mitch supporter, but at the end of the day, he wasn't good enough. Matt Nagy made him look considerably worse.
Yeah.
Justin Fields, same thing. Talented quarterback, needs to work on things to elevate his game at the NFL level. Matt Nagy made him look considerably worse at times against the Cleveland Browns, trying to throw a playbook at him that he's not ready for, not giving his offensive line help on the edges when, two of the best pass rushers in the NFL for the Browns are coming at him down his throat, and you're not sending over a tight end to chip or anything. You're just leaving left tackles that don't know what they're doing on an island, or right to whatever. And so I just hope that this team may not have the best offensive line in football, but their system and their philosophy makes more sense. And they're running the ball and engaging with the guy in front of him instead of backing up 45 times a game in pass protection. And now you're hitting him in the mouth. You're hitting him in the mouth. You're playing the fatigue game. You're wearing them out to a point where then, bam, you pull that play action. You come around the fucking side, roll out, and now all of a sudden windows are open because you've hit them in the mouth so many times. Now all of a sudden you're making your guys look good, even if they're not the best roster in the NFL. Mm-hmm. That's the simpleton way that I can explain it. That's what this team needs to do, and then figure out who is going to stick to this roster, and then use all that money next offseason that you've got in cap space. Use that first round pick that you haven't had in 3 or 4 years to get yourself Justin Fields a weapon. And now you're cooking next year with legitimate gas.
A legit player in 2023. Yeah.
And then Quentin Nelson, from the Colts, we don't have a player like him. But, and here's the deal. Raquan Smith, past him, we don't have a player like him. But
Yeah.
our offensive line, I think as far as galvanized goes, I would take that whole group as a core, as a team, and potential as to what they could do throughout the year, like Braggs was saying, up in through November. We just got to hold on and see the process. We don't really know what these kids come out of the draft, what they're capable of. I personally would have never got rid of that kid from Iowa. I think
James Daniels.
I like Daniels. I really liked him. I thought we should have kept him. And I don't know if this regime would have wanted to keep him, on the team, being that both those guys are offensive linemen. You know what I mean?
But to be quite honest with you, that's what I like about Ryan Poles so far. He's
his own man.
coming in here and doing it his way. And, he's an offensive line guy. And he comes in here and he's identifying things. Maybe we don't agree with it. But if you got to give him the benefit of the doubt until it's proven otherwise. And if that's the case, then it's fair to criticize. But at this point, he's trimming the fat as he sees it. He's coming in. He's, they don't give Tevin Jenkins. They don't just hand Tevin Jenkins. We don't know this situation with Tevin Jenkins, whether it's attitude or injury or whatever. But we do know that they put Braxton Jones at left tackle in mini camps. So obviously they were like, hey, this is about may the best man win. We're not handing nothing to nobody. And then you hear reports that he's on the, that they're looking to possibly try to trade him. Hey, Ian Rappaport, Kaplan, Peggy Kaczynski, 3 different outlets reporting that he was being shopped for a trade. They may not trade him and he may end up staying, but this is a second-round pick from last year.
Yeah.
Poles isn't tied to him by any means because he didn't draft him, but he's sending a message. Even if you don't trade Tevin Jenkins, he's sending a message to the rest of this team like, I don't care who you are or what your status is. We're going to play the best 5 guys. So I like that. And to your point about, having some hope for this offensive line, even if they don't have perennial household names across the board, I like that they're putting them against each other and breeding this competition instead of just handing it to guys. Let him battle it out. He said he's going to let them play a good amount in the preseason games here coming up. I like that. Because how else are you going to find out who the hell these guys are? And then, now maybe we could hit on some dudes.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. And like you say, Greg, that's what you want to see a first-year coaching staff, a first-year administration do. Put their stamp on the team. Because that's something that Nagy never really was able to do. But guys, thank you so much for your time. This was a blast. A blast. Appreciate your insight, Greg, and your thoughts. Brandon, thanks so much, guys. And can't wait to be back with our team Wednesday night, Brandon.
All right, see ya.
No
All
problem.
right, take care, guys.
Cleat.
He left.
All right.
Off into the night.
He knows if Brandon starts talking, it's just like when you start talking, Braggs. It could be
We
another
could go
5
all night.
You
We could
never
go
know.
all night. And and that's the beauty of these kind of platforms is you can just, sit back and bullshit and it's more comfortable, and that's what I would encourage you. You're asking like, how did we get going or how did I get going? You guys are greening it. Just keep at it, have fun with it. Don't take it too seriously and be, let it come naturally. Don't try to force it. And, always surround yourself with, good people and that's key, because podcasting can get kind of silly, everybody's doing their thing. And I mean, for me, just as a bricklayer, I've always just tried to have fun with it. It's, some people are out there making money for it, and that's fine. I mean, I have goals of my own. At the same time, I try to keep it in perspective, and if you can try to compartmentalize that stuff, you'll have more fun more times than not. It shouldn't be anything other than that when it comes to talking sports. I mean, for God's sakes, I have some opportunities that are coming down the road for me. But at the end of the day, it's just talking sports. And, I appreciate you bringing me on to talk. I'll come on anytime and talk for nine hours. That's what I do. It gives my wife a break from me talking too much. So, if you guys ever need help or tips or advice, I'm always there. Region guys got to take care of each other, so I'm always there for that. And like I said, just keep on with it, and you'll build a following. Bears fans love finding other Bears fans, and they're worldwide. They're everywhere. They're not just in the United States or in Chicago or in the region. They're in London, and they're in Germany and everywhere else. And when I went to London a couple years ago, that was on full display just how worldwide the Bears are, all the way from Mexico, from every little crevice of this earth. There's Bears fans. So they're looking for guys like you and me to sit back and have a beer or a Jack and Coke and talk some shit.
Hey, circling back to what we were talking about earlier, we picked up guys, you brought up Riley and then that Mike. So those two guys on the offensive line, we picked up in other places, Do you think that one of our Justin Fields' best weapons isn't already on the team? Because there are reports and talks of us looking at Darius Slayton, another guy from Notre Dame. What was his name? Will
Fuller.
Yeah, Will Fuller, who's 20.
I like Will Fuller.
I do too. I thought he had some good couple years there, was strong. Also, I'm a fantasy stooge, so I watched that. And then also towards the end, Cole Beasley. Now he's 33, but he might have a year or two, might be able to show these guys something, this or that, whatever. I don't know what's going on with that. I don't know how accurate these reports are, but do you think that this could potentially, this injury that we just had on Harris could open the door for one of these three or two or all three and be these pieces that, might end up being one of the most successful guys?
I mean, you can't depend, you don't know how long it'll take N'Keal Harry to recover from his injury. They say 6 to 8 weeks, but then there's a ramp up period once he's ready to go again. Now he's lost all that time to build chemistry and familiarity with Justin Fields. We're already thin at the wide receiver group. I mean, yeah, we didn't invest in the wide receivers as much as maybe some fans wanted to this year, but I don't think they're actively trying to tie a hand behind Justin Fields' back. And if you can get a guy at bargain that can help this team on a 1-year deal, or somebody that gets cut from another team, you bring them on board. Because that's still, there's guys, we're talking about guys that are available right now, but there will be surprise cuts at the end of camp and preseason that happens every year. And there will be guys that may become available that we don't even know about yet that the Bears might want to look at. Will Fuller, even though he never can stay healthy in this league, which is hard to do for any player because it's a very physical league. But if he came on this team, he'd be one of the most talented players in that wide receiver room. He's a baller. He's a baller if he can stay healthy. So, yeah, sure, bring him on. We've got enough ifs on this team. Might as well add another if. Darius Slayton or Odell Beckham Jr. is still available. He's still recovering from an ACL injury, but to me, it's a surprise that a team hasn't picked him up to.
Yeah, me too.
To plant their flag on a very talented player in this league, but maybe it's Odell that wants to wait and see until he gets healthy. Go to the highest bidder of a team that's actually competing for something. Maybe he's not ready to come over to the Bears after playing in a Super Bowl. Maybe he wants to play on a contending team and not necessarily a team that's at the bottom floor of a rebuild. Who knows? But yeah, I definitely think, they brought in N'Keal Harry a day before camp. He's gone now. You have other wide receivers injured in that room already. Byron Pringle with a quad, and it sounds like he's going to miss some time. And Velus Jones is day-to-day, so he should be fine. But still, if they brought in N'Keal Harry a day before camp and he's gone for the next 8 weeks, why wouldn't they want to look at wide receivers out there? Exactly. And Poles is still working. He brought in a linebacker the other day from the CFL. He's bringing in Riley Reef. Right when camp was starting, a $10 million deal, pretty good deal.
The back from the Broncos, Harris.
Right. So he's bringing in guys. He's not stopping, He actually brought in 2 offensive linemen, right? He brought in Riley Reef and who was the other guy they brought in? Say that again?
The guy you said earlier, Schlesinger, whatever, for Sloss.
Oh, Schofield, right.
Schofield.
I know, it's just like that's what I tell people. Like, there's some fans that know every single player right now. And my head's spinning when I go to camp. I'm like I got the roster sheet. I'm looking at it. I'm like, who the hell are half these guys? It's like going to the first day of school, and half your school is different people. You know, and God bless all the fans out there that know the roster head to toe. Yeah, it's constantly moving. But like for me, this is the getting to know period. You go to camp, go a few times, you see guys flash, you look down at your lineup card, you're like, oh, okay, this guy, I like this guy. Then you go to preseason, guys start making plays. And that's my getting to know period because, you know, some football fans are 365 days a year. Your show with your intro, it seems like you guys are fans of all sports. That to me is my saving grace with sports. Yeah, my team's always let me down, but then the next sport starts right back up and I can let go of the team that let me down. If you're a fan of only one team and they're constantly letting you down, that's all you get to live in. You don't get to like start anew with the next sport as you go from football to basketball to baseball, football to basketball to baseball to hockey, football to basketball. You know, I'm not a big hockey fan, but, you know, that's my saving grace is loving all these sports and rolling over into the next. So right now is my getting to know period of this team, and I'm excited to get to know them a little more. I couldn't get to camp today because it got rained out, which was really disappointing. I'll be there on Tuesday for Family Fest, weather permitting. And that'll be my second time seeing them in person. And then we got the first preseason game on Saturday against Kansas City Chiefs at home. And that's going to be the big one where you really get to know this team and see them live in action. And it's on TV and you record it and you come home and watch it 4 or 5 times and try to look at all the different players and how they do with their matchups. And then you really start to grind down to some of the feelings you have about particular players. You know, I always laugh. Like I'm at these camps and, you know, people are like, well, how did this guy look or that guy? Like Valus Jones and Kyler Gordon are lined up on the outside. I can't tell you how Braxton looked all camp. I wasn't watching him. I'm trying. I got 2 eyes. I can't watch 78 guys. I can only watch who I'm watching. So, yeah, you know, it's nice when they get on TV and you can record it and then you can actually see everybody, you know, individually.
And with me, I was an offensive line, so I'm always looking at that in special teams. So I don't really the other stuff. I'm looking at the line. And
that's how the real football analysts tell you to watch the game is from the inside out.
Oh, okay.
You know, I think most fans watch it from the skill position, right? But the football grinders and the ones that actually played the game, their eyes are at the offensive line. You know, and I've never been able to teach myself to watch it that way. You know, I'm always, you know, trying to see how the play is going to develop and hit the big touchdown, you know, because that's what we all want, the fireworks. Yeah. But that's just how I watch it as a fan. When I go to camp, I overly obsess about receivers, Tanner Gentry, and, you know, all these guys, you know.
I love Tanner, dude.
Yeah. Tanner was a baller. He's still on the Bills, you know, and all sorts of players. I can name wide receivers for the last 20 years that didn't work out with the Bears that I thought were going to be great. You know, so that's how it goes. But, yeah, I'm looking forward to another week of Bears coverage. Looking forward to the preseason game and seeing how things shake out with this team for sure.
So how do you pull that off? Because, you know, I'm a scaffold builder, you know, union carpenter by trade. So, you know, you just call off or what's your deal?
No, well, that's why I've been able to go as much. Like when I went to camp last week, it was on a Saturday. We don't work on the weekend. Yeah. Today I was going to go. It's on a Sunday. You know, we don't work. Yeah. But all these weekday games I've had, weekday practices I've had tickets for, but I can't go. So I've just been giving them away to friends and stuff like that because, you know, I'm busy right now. There's other years where I can skirt away and go. It was a lot easier when it was at Bourbonnais because then I'd at least come back and go to work after lunch. But I have a good boss, and you know, we're not union, we're residential bricklayers, so we do houses in the region. And I work with some old timers that are good guys. And if I go, hey, I'm going off to the Bears practice, fuck off, they're like, all right, see you tomorrow, whatever, But I try not to push it. It's a balance, They're cool about if I want to leave, they don't really care because I talk their ear off just as much as I'm talking your ear off. So if I leave, they're not mad at it, but at the same time, it's a balance because I don't want to leave them hanging out to dry. So this year I haven't gone to as many practices as I'd like to, but it's harder being that it's in Lake Forest. So I got to kind of pick and choose my battles. So yeah, Tuesday was Family Fest. So, a month ago I had bought tickets for that, and I told my boss that I'll be calling off that day. I'm going to take my daughter up there and let her have fun in the stadium while it's not, the hustle and bustle of a normal game day, and try to do a little coverage. But
and what's up with that? Like, that was you, right, on Twitter that you said something like the Packers had theirs on the weekend and it was even televised. Yeah,
Yep.
that was you. Because
and
when I took my daughter, she was about 5 or 6. Comcast covered that, and I believe that was the year that DJ Moore and Knox were rookies, and we had a blast because they were doing Guitar Hero with the kids, and I was pretending to be a little one. It didn't work out because I wanted to play some Madden with those guys and some Guitar Hero. But
they used to do Family Fest at night on Saturdays with fireworks, and now it's on a weekday where everybody's working and it's in the morning. It's like the stadium's barely full, not even close to even being full at the lower bowl. It's sad. You would think they'd try to put a little more thought into taking care of the fans a little better than they do, but they don't. They want to
work. I can't figure out how Cubs, regardless of how well we play, it's always darn near sold out. And it's always middle of the day when you should be working. I don't at all. 1 o'clock game, I'm like, what in the world's going on?
What was that? Lee Elia, the former Cubs manager, saying, "Oh, it's a bunch of bums without a job, out in the stands. You can print it." Yep, that's who we are. No, we just figure, if you want it bad enough, you'll go out there, but you got to sacrifice a few dollars if you're going to do that.
Do you follow that you were talking earlier about Jordan and that? Do you follow the Bulls now or no?
Yeah, of course.
So what's your take on the Bulls, the year before last year, and then this year? Do you think, we're like moving up, or what's going on here?
They're moving in the right direction for sure, but are they moving in a championship direction? I don't know. That's tough to say. I'm not a big fan of Vucevic. I have some guys on Twitter that bust my balls about that a lot, but I'm not sure if he's a winning player. Is he serviceable? I guess, but when we traded for him, he was supposed to be all-star caliber, and that's not exactly what I'm seeing from my vantage point. Certainly no expert, but I've played a lot of basketball in my life, watched a lot of basketball in my life. I like Zach LaVine. DeMar DeRozan is, old school, throwback kind of a player, and I like his game. Is it capable of winning a championship? I think so, if you can put the right pieces around him and Zach. Ultimately, they just got to stay healthy because Lonzo Ball, gets injured, and it sounds like he's not even going to be ready to start this season, and he's a big piece of the puzzle. I like Alex Caruso a lot. At the start of the season, Alex Caruso and Lonzo Ball were so much fun to watch. They never stop moving. They're always 2 steps ahead of the play. They're always as far as basketball chess is concerned, they know the next move before their opponent does, is whether it's passing or defensively with their hands. They're very active. And so I enjoy their game, but they got to stay healthy. Obviously, Alex had that sucker punch by that idiot from Milwaukee, Grayson Allen or whatever. But so he should be fine health-wise. But Lonzo is a huge concern. I like him as a player, but can he stay healthy? That's a bigger question. They didn't really add anything, so it's basically they're running it back with the same team. So it's hard to say how they're going to maneuver through this. I mean, will they be competitive? Sure. Can they get out of the first round in the playoffs if they can stay healthy? Sure. Are they capable of making it through the Eastern Conference and get to the NBA Finals? I don't know about that. So it's a matter of perspective as far as where your optimism level is and where your expectation level is with this team. But they're moving in the right direction for sure. And I like the front office with Arturas Karnisovas and Mark Eversley. I think they do a good job. So step by step, Zach LaVine, I guess they had to max him. I like Zach LaVine as a player. Would I have maxed him? I don't know. I'm fine with them maxing him. If they decided they weren't going to max him and they were going to try to go a completely different route, I would have been fine with that too, because I kind of trust Arturas's basketball eye. He's the one that got Jokic to Denver. He built that team, and I enjoyed Denver's team. So I'll trust AK and Mark Eversley. Whatever they want to do, I'm down with. But, still step by step, brick by brick, as the Brickies would say. Scaffold builder. Fuck all that, man. That's scary business, man. Hey. I can get up on the scaffold once it's built. I'll build scaffold on a residential home, but I can't build that pipe scaffolding, man. I don't have the balls for that, man. That takes a certain type of blood. I was an iron worker for almost a year and a half, almost 2 years, and I had to stop because I couldn't walk the iron. I was too scared. I was shaking in my boots trying to walk that iron.
Hey, Io, what do you think about Io? I love
Io. I watched him play in high school, college. He dominated in the Big Ten. I love his prospects being with the Bulls. I love that he's with the Bulls. He's a great player, a great addition to the team.
What about this rookie?
I was just about to say, I wish they would have went with another Big Ten guy from Ohio State, Branham. I wish they would have went with Malachi Branham instead of this guy that they got from Arizona. I mean, he seems like an energy guy.
Yeah.
But I love Malachi Branham's game from Ohio State. He was a scorer. They could have had him, and instead they picked Terry from Arizona, who came off the bench on that team. So it's like we went down this road with Patrick Williams. You're picking fourth in the draft, and you're taking a guy that didn't even start on his team. Does he have all the measurables? Sure. Wow. You're kind of trying to hit a home run with the athleticism and all that, but is he a basketball player? He has all the intangibles. He has the athleticism, but is he a basketball player? And I just feel like Malachi Branham, he's a baller. He's a gamer. And sometimes you can't teach all that. You can't teach athleticism too, so I understand the reach when you go for players like that. But we'll see. I'm fine with it, because he's a bench piece, so you want the guy to come on and bring energy. It kind of reminds me of Tyrese Thomas, though. That's why we drafted him. We traded freaking LaMarcus Aldridge, who to me was a gamer, a basketball player, for athleticism in Tyrese Thomas from LSU. Because he had the measurables and the jumping, and he had a good March Madness, and then he was a bust for us. So, sometimes you want to go for the basketball player and not always with the athleticism. But like I said, I trust AK. I'm fine. He can do whatever he wants because he turned the team around from being in the doldrums of the NBA to being back in the playoffs last year, and a team that was fun to watch until the injury bug bit them. So we'll see. Long way to go for Bulls season, but always love talking basketball for sure.
And on the inside, we picked up Drummond, and now for the last 10 years or so, I've looked at him in Detroit. Gave us a hard time. You think he could help?
Vooch?
Yeah, Vooch.
Yeah, absolutely. I would hope so. He's our one big pickup, feels like, this offseason. So I would hope so. But, is his prime, is he past his prime? Probably. How much can he help? I guess we'll find out. They picked up, who is the big guy they picked up halfway through last year?
Tristan?
Tristan. And I was like, okay, because we've seen him do well at the
Oh yeah.
NBA championship level. Like, that's the kind of guy you want that can teach these youngsters. And then he ended up not being a great pickup. He was like a couple games. It was like, okay, and then, the team, I guess, was just so injured at that point, but he was kind of a minus player. He wasn't a plus player for us. Maybe Drummond can be better than, let's hope Drummond's better than the Tristan pickup, I guess is how I'll phrase
That's
it.
all you're hoping for. How you're
Well, protect the rim. Well, we need a guy to protect the rim. So he'll do that probably better than Tristan's older, right? So let's hope that Drummond can protect the rim and help Vooch in that regard for sure.
I had some guys on. We were talking about the fact that the lack of defensive rebounds was astonishing. You look all the way across the entire roster last year, and it was like an average of one or less rebound per game. What is that a philosophy? Is that a scheme, or is that just lack of discipline, or what's going on there? You know what I mean?
It's tough to say. I mean, I guess maybe lack of discipline, but I mean, what do you think?
I mean, what coach allows a defensive rebounds to just no, we're not going to get those. Let those fly. Like I
think it's more pieces to the puzzle, right? I mean, they just don't have, Vooch is standing out on the 3-point line. He's your big guy.
Yeah.
And everybody else is standing out on the 3-point line, so you need somebody to get in there. And Patrick Williams was just coming back from his injury because he could probably help you out down there.
But to your point, if Vooch is standing out there at the 3-point line, he's the closest to the basket to go get the defensive rebound. Am I right?
Yep.
So what the hell happened there? I mean, he should be leading the league in freaking defensive rebounds. I don't get that one,
Yeah, no. And then with Vooch, the thing that drove me nuts is, you have all these guys that are a better scoring option ahead of you, Levine and DeRozan, and you're the third option, and you get all these wide open shots. You're supposed to be a guy that can knock down shots regardless of if you're open or not. And he was clanking a lot of the open shots. So, and then all I hear are these people that want to always go at me on Twitter like, he's a good player. I'm like, not from what I see, but I guess we're all watching something different at the end of the day. Eye of the beholder. Long way to go, though. Long way to go.
What do you think's going on with the Blackhawks, man? Do you follow that at all? Because
no, I'm not a hockey fan. I see Fat Mike's in the chat saying Braggs don't know hockey. I not only don't know hockey, I don't like hockey. I'm not a hockey guy.
Okay.
Admittedly, the most hockey I've ever watched or loved was when the Mighty Ducks had 3 movies come out. D2, D2 with the knuckle puck. That was awesome. I was a big Mighty Ducks fan in the 90s. We'd go out and play hockey on the street and use the recycling bin as the goal. But I never got into the Blackhawks. And then when they started winning championships, I know a lot of people kind of hopped on the gravy train, but I wasn't one of those fans because, like, for me, it's hard for me. Like, I'm so passionate about the teams that I've rooted for my whole life. It was hard for me to just hop on the Blackhawks thing and do the Chelsea dagger. And there were some fans that did that. I'm not going to name names, but there were a lot of fans that all of a sudden were the biggest hockey fans ever because Patrick Kane was so cute and Chelsea dagger was such a fun song every time they scored. And, they made it going to the game such a fun experience. And I get all that. I'm trying not to hate too hard, but at the same time, it was kind of like for me, I was like, I just couldn't, as entertaining as it was. And I watched most of their playoff runs. I tuned in, but when they won it each time, it wasn't like the way it felt when the Cubs won it, because like we talked about earlier, just as going through that journey as a fan and being through the dog days and seeing the ups and downs. And when you finally win one and you've gone through all that stuff as a fan, it means so much more. When you haven't been through that stuff, for me, it's hard to fake that. And I mean, for some people, sports isn't as important in that way in their heart, and they can just root for something that's fun to watch and be excited when they win it. But for me, I wasn't buying all this Blackhawks gear and waving my Blackhawks flag down the street when they win it and stuff. Like, save that for the fans that have been through all the thick and thin is kind of how I saw it. So then I started trolling Blackhawks fans because when they played the Ducks the one year in the playoffs, when the Ducks got real good for a few years, I would act like I was a huge Ducks fan because of my love for the Mighty Ducks and Emilio Estevez growing up. And all my friends on Facebook wanted to kill me for those few years while the Ducks were good. Had a lot of hearty back and forth with some family and friends back then. I miss those days.
Yeah, I do too, man. I'm from California, so I don't know how we had hockey figured out with Gretzky and then San Jose, and it just kind of exploded over there. You know what I mean? And I didn't follow it that much either. So, but I did hear that we traded off some veterans and picked up some. I don't know if you call them prospects or whatnot, but some people actually seem I wouldn't say excited, but hopeful, I guess, is probably the right word for, the future. It doesn't sound like right away instant success, maybe more along the lines of what we're seeing with the Cubs, you know what I mean? So
Sure.
It is nice to, going back to the Bulls. I mean, damn it, man. At least we've got one team right now that is fun.
Well, don't jinx it.
Right? Exactly. So don't want to give the kiss of death. Hey, man, it was great talking to you, and I can't wait to see your content Tuesday after you're done with checking everything out and whatever. I hope you have a great time and the weather cooperates and all that good stuff. Can you tell everybody real quick where to find you in case they don't by now?
Yeah, I'm on Brags in the Stands, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, having fun on there, do some live shows, do some shows like you're doing here in house, when I can. I have my personal Twitter account where I do most of my bantering is at gbragsjr23. Feel free to follow if you want to hear more of this mindless bantering that I love to do, but I enjoy the community of it all. I enjoy meeting new fans like you and everybody else that supports what I'm trying to do. I appreciate everybody, Fat Mike, I brought that young buck into this podcasting world. So, it's fun to meet guys like that. I don't know. Do you know Fat Mike?
Yeah, he told me to start sitting down because I had too much energy standing up. So this is the first ever podcast, not that I've had many, okay, let's get that straight, that I've actually spent sitting down. So
I watch like Pat McAfee. He stands up while he does his show.
That might be where I got it because I have similar energy, nervous energy that he has,
Sure.
but I don't have the skill set or sponsors or anything. So I'm just now. Now I'm just listening to Fat Mike, and I'm like, you know what? I'll sit down, and see how that goes,
Yeah,
so,
eventually get yourself some background stuff, sports stuff, or but don't let Fat Mike shame you out of standing. If you want to stand, sometimes hey, be different. Everybody's podcasts are the same, right? So how are you going to separate yourself from the pack? Well, you got to do things different, right? So be you, as Matt Nagy used to say. Be genuine, be natural. That's the best advice I can give you. But
he was definitely himself, that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't think anybody's out there trying to be Matt Nagy right now, brother.
Yeah, but no, I brought Fat Mike into this world, and I can take him out. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding. I like Fat Mike. He's a good dude.
Yeah, me too.
He's got a lot of energy. He makes me look calm, which is not easy. So,
that guy stays busy, doesn't he? That's like a full-time job for him. Like all that stuff he's got lined up and all the people he needs. I mean, it's crazy. That's a lot,
Yeah. When I worked with him, we used to call it the Fat Mike Rolodex because he's got everybody in his number, and he's calling everybody in the morning. He'll call everybody before they're even up. He's up doing things. So
Wow.
I always enjoyed his spirit and his hustle. So a toast to Fat Mike. But
Right.
he's busting my balls in the chat about not knowing hockey. No, I don't know hockey. I don't care about hockey. But
Hey,
no, I
man,
appreciate it. Like I said,
off here too, brother. So I'm looking forward to hearing that release whenever it comes out, man. You got me.
yeah, we got some stuff coming up here this preseason that I'll be announcing here soon. One step at a time, when you're doing stuff like this, brick by brick, and that's kind of always been my mentality in life. And
Hey,
so
really, what is that Twitch? Because I thought that was for like if you're playing like a game or something and you want people to watch you.
yeah, you can just like you stream your show here on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, you can also stream it on Twitch and people will find you there.
Oh, I thought it was just for video gamers.
No, you can stream whatever you want on there.
Is that how it started, or did I just?
Yeah, that's how it started. But
Okay.
now you can stream anything on there.
You know what?
And-
Come to think of it, doesn't one of is it Kaplan?
Yeah,
Something-
ESPN 1000 and 670 both have Twitch streams for
Yeah.
their radio station. So like you can watch their radio shows so you can actually see them. And then there's also a chat going on where you can, conversate with other fans of those, radio stations. So,
Wow.
just like all these other ones. But you'll learn. Like I said, like just with the StreamYard, doing the podcasting and all this stuff, I had no idea what I was doing when I first started. And you just kind of one step at a time, you learn how to pull up the comments, then you learn how to pull up a video, and then you start learning how to, put it on different channels.
Hit live before you start the video.
Hit live before you start, and before you know it, you're all grown up, and it comes very easily. So, and if you have a good team around you that pulls from the same rope, it makes it all the much easier. So, I wish you best of luck in your endeavor, but just have fun with it. And if you ever need any help or advice or anything, you know where to find me.
You got it, brother. Hey, thanks again.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, see you. Bear down.
Have a good night. Bear down.